When you do nothing, nothing happens. Best time to take action is now.
This is the time to work on you and your business.
So I've created a group,
An online academy for professionals and entrepreneurs. Power Partners will help you
to start helping yourself.
Helped me change my life and my business.
Not a Toastmasters, it's not a BNI, it's not any of these, but it is. So it's all this stuff in one place.
Get the results that you deserve right now. So what are you waiting for? Let's make it happen.
See you in Power Partners.
Good morning. Bonjour. Comment ça va? Et toi? Ah, très bien. Hola. Ni hao. Buongiorno. Bienvenue. Wan Ying. Bienvenidos. Benvenuta. And welcome. Welcome to another exciting episode of Gem Hunter Stories. My name is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemological storyteller. And each and every week, I get the unique and wonderful opportunity to take you on a journey, the places you've never been before, to hear stories you've never heard before. Each week, I get a magnificent moment to take you on a mental, physical, and spiritual adventure into the art, science, history, and magic of gemstones, precious metals, and fine jewelry. The whole world, the whole history of the world revolves around gemstones and fine jewelry, either directly or indirectly. Gemstones have been here from the very beginning. So what I do is I take those stories and I use them as a template, as an inception point, as a bridge to get you to begin the journey of discovering the value of your own stories. Last week, we talked about something really deep. We talked about being allochromatic and idiochromatic. Go ahead, Barbara, bring up my screen, please. And I got a lot of wonderful comments on that, and I wanted to see if I can take that knowledge to the next level for you, to get you to understand what it is. Hold on one second, guys. Let's see something. Wow. Okay. Let's see. Here. There we go. Okay, cool. So, all right. Thank you. The essence of being allochromatic or idiochromatic. One of the great things about doing this show is, and your comments, thank you. Please keep sending your comments, because your comments help me see not only the questions that you have, but it makes me think. Good morning, Lois. It makes me think. It makes me have to look at it from a different point of view. So what I wanted to do today is kind of show you the journey that I go on each and every week in seeing the connection, seeing the analogy between gemstones and people. And sometimes when I leave the program, it's like I start thinking, okay, what's next? What's the next thing? And I started thinking about being allochromatic and idiochromatic. And it left me with the word that I need you to understand. So this is one of those shows that you need to get a pencil and a piece of paper. So take a second and go ahead and get that. Excuse me. Because I want you to write down, I want you to take down a word. And when I give you this word, understand that this word, you will not really know what that word means in the beginning. But by the end of this episode, not only will you understand the meaning of this word, this term, this concept, but it will change your life once you really start to put it together. And that word is isomorphous replacement. I know some of you are saying, Barry, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. What are we talking about? Science. I know, work with me. Isomorphous replacement, or some people say isomorphic replacement. And I want you to write down that word. I want you to think of a word, and I'll show you how that word relates to you and will change your life. So let's go. Let's do a recap. Last week, we talked about being allochromatic. And what allochromatic means is that you have a gemstone with a specific structure. It has a specific structure. So allochromatic are gem materials, gemstones, where the coloring elements are not essential. They're only present as an impurity. Think about that. As an impurity, as something else, as something different than what the structure of that gemstone is. So let me just go back for a sec. So this is a ruby. This is a ruby. In fact, this is a beautiful ruby. This is a Burmese ruby with the color of a Burmese ruby. The highest quality, highest value is called pigeon blood red. That's what an exquisite, highly valued ruby looks like. And what a ruby ultimately is aluminum oxide. Aluminum oxide, aluminum, 2 aluminums and 3 oxygens, aluminum oxide. That is the basic structure of a ruby. A ruby is an allochromatic gemstone, which means that it has a certain color and the structure of it. And then once you put something into that structure, the color changes. So when you take aluminum oxide, this is what it looks like. Don't trip. Don't freak out when you look at the chemistry. This is it. This is what those of you who are born in July, those of you who love rubies, this is it. This is what your ruby is on a molecular level. Aluminum oxide. So don't be afraid of the science. Just look at it. The red balls are aluminum. The blue balls are oxygen. And then when you take that structure of what that is and you combine it, this is what aluminum oxide looks like without anything in it. This is a sapphire. This is a ruby. This is aluminum. This is what aluminum oxide looks like. In fact, I have one. I showed you last week. This is basically what this is. This is synthetic, obviously. But this is aluminum oxide. It's just a transparent clear stone. Still beautiful. But this is what it looks like, just aluminum oxide. And then when you put something, remember the periodic table? I know I'm bringing back bad memories for some of you, but the periodic table, we talked about that the periodic table has 118 elements, known elements in the whole universe. So ladies and gentlemen, when you would sit there in class and see that big periodic table in the front of the classroom, and you would say to yourself, why is this there? Oh my God, that's because everything in the universe is on that table. Write that down. The periodic table has everything in the known universe. From hydrogen, number 1, all the way to, I think it's lawrencium, 118. Everything. So when you take And then we talked about what the coloring elements are. These are any gemstone that you've ever seen in your life. Colored gemstones have had these coloring elements. Vanadium, if you have that in it, it turns a gemstone either colors, the responsibility is either green and pink. Cobalt is blue. Manganese is a pink color. Iron, when you have iron in a gemstone, it could either be green, it could be blue, it could be red, or it can be yellow. When you have chromium, chromium can change a gemstone either from red to green. That's why when you have chromium in aluminum oxide, it turns it red. When you have chromium in beryllium, a magnesium beryllium silicate, which is an emerald, you turn it green. Nickel turns a gemstone green. Copper is either green or blue. Titanium, blue. And at the bottom, you see nitrogen and boron. That really relates more to diamonds. And we'll talk about really just the unbelievable understanding that I got just in the last 3 days. I've been studying this for 18 years, but I didn't really see it until I started thinking about last week and this program. So these are the coloring elements. All gemstones are colored by these elements. So when you put when you put chromium into aluminum oxide, it turns it red. When you put iron in titanium in aluminum oxide, you get blue. You get blue. Allochromatic. And what I want you to begin to understand is that in that structure, this is, and the way I was thinking of it, and this is why it blew my mind, when I would think about the structure, I would always think of it from a linear point of view. I would look at it from a one-dimensional point of view because it's on a piece of paper. And I never really understood. I knew what allochromatic meant. I knew what idiochromatic meant, but I didn't know what isomorphic replacement was. I thought it was just something separate. But then when I realized that a gemstone is three-dimensional. So when you have aluminum oxide, this is the structure. Again, red balls are aluminum. Blue balls are the oxygen. And I know that sounded kind of strange. It's a family show, all right? So, and then when you put in chromium, when you put aluminum oxide and you combine it with chromium, and when I say chromium, combine it with chromium, this is the real trick. I want you to stay with me. It doesn't require a lot. When you have a structure of aluminum oxide, thousands, millions of atoms, all you need to do is put one chromium every 5,000 atoms, one chromium every 5,000 aluminum atoms. Remember, let's go back. You said this is the structure. So for every one of those red balls, 5,000 of them, every one is replaced by chromium. Every one out of every 5,000 atoms in a structure of aluminum oxide is now chromium. So without that, you get this. You get a colorless gemstone. You get basically, this is what aluminum oxide looks by itself. Still pretty, still nice, but it doesn't have the same value without having that impurity in it. So once you put that impurity in it, it goes from this to this. And that's when it began to really dawn on me what what isomorphic replacement means to us. The power of that. When you put iron and titanium into aluminum oxide, and again, not a lot, even less. Basically, I said aluminum oxide, when you put the chromium in it, one out of every 5,000 atoms, we're talking about less than 1% of a ruby, less than 1%, has chromium in it, and yet it changes the color. It changes how it interacts with the light. So now it goes from a colorless gemstone to a red gemstone, to a ruby. And when you put iron and titanium in it, this is what aluminum oxide looks like without anything in it. With no chromium, nothing, just aluminum and oxide, just like this. But when you take that and put iron and titanium in it, this is what it looks like when you put chromium in it. This is a natural. This is the natural corundum. That's what the family rubies and sapphires is. It's called corundum. So this is what corundum looks like without anything in it. And this is what corundum looks like, aluminum oxide, when you put chromium in it. It turns red. And when you put iron and titanium in it, not a lot. Literally, we said less than 1% or around 1% of chromium to make a ruby. To make a sapphire blue, you need 0.01% of aluminum atoms to be replaced. 0.01% of that whole structure has iron and titanium in it in order to create a blue color. So you're going from this aluminum oxide with just a hint of iron and titanium creates that color. And that's when I just said, oh my God. Oh my God. I'm gonna let you think about that. Think about, how does that relate to you? Because some of you are asking that, Barry, what the heck does this have to do with me? I don't change colors. Yeah, you do. You may not change outward colors, but you change inside of you. What isomorphic replacement is for a gemstone is when you have a gemstone with a specific structure. And when you put something into that structure, that gemstone changes a different color. It interacts with the lights differently. If you put chromium in it, it becomes ruby. If you put just the smallest amounts of iron and titanium in various levels of that smaller, various levels, you get a blue sapphire. Or sapphires come in every color in the rainbow, but red. Just a hint of iron and titanium, sometimes just a little bit of chromium, and that's how you get pink sapphires. But what isomorphic replacement means to a gemstone is that it changes color. And isomorphous replacement for us is thoughts. Think about it. Thoughts, when you change your thoughts, you change the way you see the world. You change the way you interact with the world. You change the way you interact with the light. That's what As a Man Thinketh was talking about. That's what this book was talking about. I just didn't understand it when I sat there. I'm not talking about years ago. I've always, you guys who know me, who've seen this show, knows that what I've gone through in my life and how this book, As a Man Thinketh, changed my life. I was homeless. You know that whole story. But I didn't really understand why it worked. I didn't understand how it worked until I began to understand isomorphic replacement. Think about it. Even in the Bible. Yes, I know Marie. Hi, Marie. Marie is falling out right now. Yes, even in the Bible, for as he thinks in his heart, so he is. Proverbs 23:7. I'll give you guys a second because you're like, oh my God, Barry's quoting the Bible. I know. Okay. I tell you, God comes to you in different ways, because I started thinking, wait a minute. If in isomorphous replacement, if you change an element, in that gemstone, that element will be replaced. So instead of having aluminum, you have some chromium in it, and that new structure, because you have the chromium in it, changes the color of it. How is that any different than us changing our thoughts? If you change your thoughts, you're going to interact with the light, with your life in a different way. That's what that first section in As a Man Thinketh says. Although your circumstances may be uncongenial, they shall not long remain so of you, but perceive an idea and strive to reach it. You cannot travel within and stand still without. Think about that from a molecular point of view. When you see a gemstone, what you're seeing is the manifestations of atoms inside on a molecular chemical level. You're talking about atoms, 10 to the minus 9, 10 to the minus 12. That's how small they are, but yet and that's how few you are in. You have to have inside of you to change the color of a gemstone. What As a Man Thinketh talks about, what the Bible talks about, is if you change your thoughts, you change your life. And I say that not just from someone reading it. I'm telling you that from my own personal experience. That's what this book talks about. Think about how the next line in this book says, he dreams of better things. He thinks of intelligence, of refinement, of grace and beauty. He thinks it. So what he's doing is he or she is changing the molecules, changing those molecules, changing the pain, changing the disappointment, changing the things that was inside of you to create the person that you are now. And if you want to change that person, if you want to change yourself, then you have to change your thoughts. And once you change your thoughts, the way you interact with the light, with your world, changes. This is not just hocus pocus. This is not, oh, click your heels 3 times and it just happened. I'm telling you scientific fact, because remember we talked about the human body. Thought is isomorphic replacement. It is. It's the same thing. What a gemstone is a basic understanding of who we are. If this is true, you can't deny it. We talked about the periodic table. We talked about all 118 elements are in the universe. And we talked about how the human body has only how many elements are part of the human body. Look at it. We're talking about 99% of all the elements in the human body. Oxygen, 65%. Carbon, 18%. Hydrogen, 10%. And all the rest are basically trace elements, the same atoms that are in those gemstones are inside. Some of them are inside of you. So when you say aluminum oxide, you're talking about aluminum with oxygen. 65% of you is oxygen. Notice I didn't say 65% of you is oxygen if you're a Democrat, or 65% of you is oxygen if you come from a certain country or you're a certain race. If you are a human being, you have a specific molecular structure that makes you a human being, a living organism. 99% of you, who you are, is made up of basically 6 elements Of the 118, 6 of them are inside of you. And what I'm saying to you is the science in that has to be exactly the same. Aluminum just doesn't act a certain way with humans and then acts a certain way with something else. Aluminum has properties because if you remember your 8th grade science, what is the definition of an element? An element is something that cannot be divided into something smaller. Gold is gold. Oxygen is oxygen. So if you understand that concept, that this is not just a wish, this is not just Barry saying it, this is law, this is the universe, this is how it works, then you understand why isomorphic replacement is so far, because basically what isomorphic replacement is, it's a way for you to decide what your story is. That's what blew my mind. That's the secret. You change your thought, and therefore, if you change your thought, you will change your value. When I showed you a colorless sapphire, this doesn't have a lot of value. That's why there was a whole trough of these in that restaurant. There was a whole trough, hundreds of them, just laying there. It was just decoration. Why? Because they didn't have any value in it, because there was nothing in it. Ask yourself a question. The things that you've gone through in your life, the thing that gave it value, it's what's inside of you. Your grandmother teaching you how to cook. Your mom, not your dad, but your mom taught you how to get underneath a car and fix an engine. That teacher that taught you how to swim or run track or to write, those were the impurities. Those were the things that's inside of you. Think about the power of knowing that because you have a particular molecular structure, therefore you are a human. In your case, in our case, we are human beings, and all we have to do is change our thoughts. And as a man thinketh, it says, very soon, so altered has his mind become that the workshop can no longer hold him. It has become so out of harmony with his mentality that it falls out of his life as a garment is cast aside. And with the growth of opportunity which fit his expanding powers, he passes out of it forever. That's because that person spent his time. And as a man thinketh, it says, he spends his time and his all his energy, his time and means, small though they are, to the development of his latent powers and resources. That's what it's talking about. Changing your thoughts. Changing your thoughts. And because you change your thoughts, you have to interact with the light differently. Every time from now on, every time you look at a gemstone, I don't care if you're looking at the ones that I put on my Facebook page or this show. Every time you look at a person from now on, understand that that person is no different than a gemstone. None. No different than a gemstone. What you see in that person, if that person is a mean person, that's because there's something, the molecules, the thoughts inside that person change their molecular structure. And therefore, that's what they manifest. The years, the decades I was angry, the decades in my life where I knew in my soul that I was Darth Vader. My soul, my anger was so because of the things that I had to, because of the things, the elements, the thoughts that I took in my head. And I let them infiltrate I let them come into every molecule in my body. And that's why January 2010th, I felt like I was going to die, because the molecules, the anger, the hatred, the self-esteem was eating at my molecular structure. I felt like I was dying, and I didn't even realize that the way I got out of it is I changed my thoughts. I changed my thought. I changed the relationship that, for me, my mom changed. I changed the relationship that I had with my mother. I changed it. She didn't change. I changed the molecular structure in my head. All those elements that was in my thoughts that took my part of my molecular that made me act in a certain way. I changed it, and I replaced it with something else. So go ahead and take a second of that, because I can't wait to tell you about idiochromatic, because it gets even better. So I'll see you on the other side.
Today, over 1 billion children in the world live in poverty. At Help Heal Humanity, our goal is to connect children in need with people like you who want to make a difference. Our student sponsorship program helps provide children with the necessities for a healthy and successful start to life. When you sponsor a student, you're not only giving them the gift of education, you're giving them the best chance for a brighter future. 100% of your donation supports the tuition fees, uniforms, textbook, and school supplies needed to thrive in a safe and healthy learning environment. Sponsor a student now and be the catalyst for their brighter future.
Think about that commercial. Think about that commercial. And Barbara and I didn't plan that. Think about those commercials. All those children that you saw. What Healing for Humanity is talking about, is asking you for, is to be that element. To be that thing that enters into their molecular structure, whether it be food, whether it be education, whether it be clothing, all those things that you give to those children. Look at the signs they held up. They had their name in first grade, 6 years old, first grade. This is so you're literally taking those human beings, those gemstones, and each one of them has a basic molecular structure by virtue of the fact that they're human beings. And you decide, you help the elements that's inside of them. So when they grow up, they will grow up interacting with the light in a specific way. And that's if you're allochromatic. And we talked about, when you understand stories, when you understand what the value of a story is, that child, you help one of those children. You're not just helping them today or tomorrow. You're helping change them for the rest of their lives. They will become a completely different gemstone. The possibility, I should say, of them becoming a much more powerful gemstone comes with you adding that element. So when you're a teacher, you're adding elements. When you're a mom and you're feeding children good food, you're adding elements. Again, the whole human body, 99% of everyone watching this is made up of those six elements, and everything else is trace. A little bit of magnesium, a little bit of manganese, a little bit of cobalt. Look at your cereal boxes. Look at your food. Those are the elements that go into your body. Not a lot, a little bit. That element can be that kiss. That element can be just that kind word. That element can be just helping someone that begins to get them to change their story. Once you change their stories, you change their value. Look at it. Look at it. Everything, oxygen, carbon. Look at the numbers. This is science, ladies and gentlemen. Notice I don't have to talk about politics. If you're a human, you're in here. If you're not, well, then, thank you for watching for whatever planet you're on. But if you're a human being, this is who you are. When you're, and it gets even better when you're idiochromatic. Oh, let's go back. Again, allochromatic, you got a basic structure. You add something to that basic structure, and that gemstone changes color. It changes how it interacts with the light. Idiochromatic. Oh, those of us who are idiochromatic, take it to the next level. Idiochromatic, just do a refresh. Idiochromatic is when you have a gem material where the coloring elements, the things, those 9/11 coloring elements are an essential part of the gemstone's atomic structure. I'll put it real simple. Gatorade said it so wonderfully 30 years, 40 years ago when they said, is it in you? An idiochromatic person is a person who, with who they are, is what they are. So peridot, again, happy birthday to those of you who were born in August. My niece just had a baby. My sister, in fact, today's my sister's birthday. Happy birthday, Jamel. My sister is idiochromatic. My sister changed my life because when I was in the depths of my despair, when I was in the depths of being alone, when I felt like I had nobody, I remember calling my sister up, and years had passed. God knows how many years had passed that I had not called my sister. And one day I found, this is when they still had, payphones. I found some money on the street, and I just decided to call my sister who had not seen me in years. Made me feel like, Barry, you can come home. I love you. That's who she is. My sister has been like that forever. My sister has always been that calming force, no matter what was going on. And my sister caught hell from my mom too. I'm the oldest and she's the youngest. So we both caught opposite ends of my mother going through what she went through. But what my sister did was took the things that she received in her life, and she did not allow it to change her, because who she is as a person is who she is. When you're idiochromatic, that means there's an element inside of you that makes you who you are. Peridot will always be green because peridot's basic structure is magnesium, iron, silicate. It's built in. And you see people like this all the time. When you're idiochromatic, that's the person that grew up knowing that they were going to be a firefighter. That's Mozart, who created his first concerto at 4 years old. It was in him. There was nothing else for him to do in his life. He heard the music that lived inside of his heart and his soul, and he played it. And that's the challenge when you're idiochromatic. When you're idiochromatic, you have to understand that you have a responsibility to be who you are. Peridot understands that it is green. Peridot has been around for 4,000 years. 4,000 years. Peridot used to be the choice gemstone. In fact, some people feel that Cleopatra really had more peridot mines than she did emerald mines, because it spoke to her. It spoke to her. The structure of what peridot is in it. And the only difference, you have different shading of green from a lighter, kind of a greenish yellow to a more deeper green. And the more iron it has in it, the more iron that it has in its molecular structure, the more value it has. It's built in. When Michael Phelps' mom was dealing with Michael Phelps as a child, I read his story. She just took him swimming because she just wanted to deal with him. Like, oh my God, this boy got ADHD, and just was running around the house. And she just threw him in the pool. Like, can you just swim? Some of the energy. She didn't know that his molecular structure, his physical body was built to swim. That's why he did what he did. Think about all the people in history, not just the musicians or the artists. Think about that teacher that you had in school, that you just knew that that is what they were born to do. They are idiochromatic. I think about one of my clients, Marie. Marie works, she's a flight attendant. She's a flight attendant. She's been doing this for 18 years. And when you hear the way she talks about being a flight attendant, you know that whatever happens on that plane, if somehow or other something happened to that plane, Marie would be the kind of person, as the plane is going down to total destruction, Marie would be the kind of person that would love you and care for you all the way down, because she is idiochromatic. It is who she is. There are people who care for people. There are teachers. When you have people who are caretakers, with people who nurses, homemakers, people who stay with people who are dying, and they stay with them all the way through, not because it's their job, not because they just get paid. I mean, that's nice, but they know it's who they are. They are idiochromatic. Understand the power of knowing of who you are. That's what awareness is. Remember, we talked about the 7 elements of storytelling? That is what awareness is. Awareness is that moment when you realize that this is not something you can do. This is something that you have to do. And the reason why you have to do it is because you're idiochromatic. That is the structure of peridot. Look at it. Look at it. Look at the silicon. Magnesium, iron, all the time you see Fe, that's iron. And silicate, silicon oxide. It is in it. It can't be anything else. 4,000 years later, peridot is always going to be peridot. 10, 20, 30 years later, that teacher, that mom, you know, moms don't grow up. Think about how many moms are idiochromatic. Moms who just grow up. No, there's no woman that ever gets a guidebook and says, here's a guidebook for your child. There you go. There are people who struggle with it. There's people, and it's a hard job. It's an extremely hard job to take care of a child. One minute you were okay, you were by yourself living. Next minute, now you have this mouth to feed. Now you have this person you have to take. And there are so many women, there's so many people who, when they have that child, because men could do it too, that we have that child, and you understand immediately that your job is to be a mom. So even in my situation, despite the anger and the frustration, the things that I felt as a child growing up, because my mom was an alcoholic and all the anger, I started thinking, whoa, wait a minute. Did you ever go hungry? Nope. Was your house ever not clean? Did you ever go out the house with dirty clothes and stuff? The whole time when she was doing whatever she was doing that you called abuse and you called this, and I'm not saying it wasn't, but let's change the thought and realize that despite all that, there was something inside of my mother that was passed on to me. Every time I take a class, and I told you in my household, if you came home with anything less than a B, my mother said, don't come home. And the pressure that I felt from that growing up. Now, 40 years, 50 years later, when I take a class, yeah, I expect to be, at least. Why? Because my mother's still in my head. The elements that my mother placed inside of me manifest years later. That's what As a Man Thinketh talks about, the last paragraph. Very soon, so altered. Sorry. Years later, we see this youth as a full-grown man. We find him a master of certain forces of the mind, which he wields with worldwide influence and almost unequal power. In his hands, he holds the cords of gigantic responsibilities. He speaks, and lo, lives are changed. Men and women hang upon his words and remold their characters, and sun-like, he becomes the fixed and luminous center around which innumerable destinies revolve. He has realized the vision of his youth. He has become one with his ideal. That is that decision, that discovery that we all must make in our lives to understand, are you allochromatic? Are you going to take the things that you learned? Are you going to take those lessons and retake the bad stuff, whatever went on in your life? And I'm not saying it's easy, ladies and gentlemen. It took me decades to figure this out. I'm still figuring this out. 3 days ago, I'm sitting at my desk saying, oh my God, this is isomorphic replacement. I replaced the bad thoughts in my head with the good thoughts. Or am I idiochromatic? Are there things inside of me that I can do what I don't even have to think about? So when my ex-wife told me that I was a fountain of useless information, I had to ask myself, well, she ain't really that far off. What am I going to do with it? That's what she was asking me. That's what she was asking me. What are you going to do with the elements that are inside of you? How are you going to interact with the light? So despite the fact that she was going through her own struggle, the words that she used on me that I thought was very hurtful at the time, I realized she was planting an element. She was making me realize what I already had inside of me. And that's what some of us have to do. We got to realize who we are. What is your molecular structure and the beauty of it? Because we are human beings, we can change it. We can change it. A gemstone, a diamond a ruby is going to be a ruby forever. Unless you do something to it, you irradiate it, and you still are going to have a ruby. You're still not going to change aluminum oxide. You might add something to it. You might try to, and this is what they do in the jewelry industry. They change the color by doing what? Adding something to it. That's what we can do. We can add, you can become, when you understand what isomorphic replacement is, the power that, then you understand that you can add stuff to it. And then, it gets even better, because I had to think to myself, wait a minute, hold on a second. Okay. You got allochromatic here. You got idiochromatic here. So I started thinking, what about a diamond? As I told you last week, and I want to say it again, a diamond, there's only 2 gemstones in the whole of 4,000 different minerals. There's only 2 types of gem material that come from the mantle of the earth. I'm talking about extreme heat, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit. You're talking about hundreds of pounds of pressure, only two, peridot and a diamond. And as I said before, when I thought about it, I said, okay, well, where does a diamond fit in? Because a diamond is not only allochromatic, diamonds come in every color of the rainbow. So what is the basic structure of a diamond? Carbon. A diamond is made up of carbon. So when you put in a mineral, an element like nitrogen, you get a yellow diamond. When you take boron and put it into the molecular structure of a diamond, it becomes blue. But that's when I started thinking, wait a minute. Diamonds are allochromatic and idiochromatic. Because a diamond by itself, just the basic molecular structure, a diamond is beautiful. A colorless diamond with nothing else in it. Diamonds are the only gemstone that has one element. So in order to change the color of that diamond, you need to either it has to grow into an environment where there are other elements around it that gets into the molecular structure, or it comes out of the ground as a diamond, carbon, just like peridot comes out as magnesium, iron, silicate, nothing else. There's nothing to replace the iron. So those of you who love to cook, those of you who love to eat, there's something inside of you that makes that happen. So the beauty, I found a whole new reason to understand diamonds. And that's what, remember months ago, Barbara and I had that little thing going on about the value of a diamond. So when you are a part of this network, the Diamond Factor, Diamond Experience Network, the Diamond Factor Experience, you're talking about now being a part of something that allows you to be either allochromatic, taking your skills, taking your knowledge, taking your education, taking your training, and speaking to the world. Or the guests that Barbara has on this network of people who knew from day one that they were going to be a lawyer. From day one, they knew that they wanted to have a business. From their earliest memory, they knew that they wanted to just fix some stuff. They saw it. So when I'm talking, when I think about Katherine Johnson, remember the movie Hidden Figures? When Katherine Johnson, as a little black girl in racist, I think she's from Mississippi. Well, in that period of time, there was a whole bunch of places in the United States that was racist. But here's that scene where the white teacher gives little Katherine Johnson a piece of chalk because no one could figure out that mathematical equation. And because I understand stories, I knew that had to be significant to the whole story. The way they shot him, like, this is going to be significant. This is going to come back. And years later, decades later, when they're sitting there, millions of dollars spent on the space program, and John Glenn is sitting there on the launch pad waiting for that little black girl who grew up to be a black woman, surrounded by people who may not liked her because of the color of her skin, because she was a woman. When the mission commander, played by Kevin Costner, gave her that chalk, she walked up to that blackboard. And because of what was inside of her, because of her molecular structure, despite all the things that had happened in her life, when she received that chart from her boss and told her to figure out where a man being shot into space, where he would land, she knew exactly, give or take a mile, where this man would land. That's idiochromatic. That's who she is. And the beauty of that tells people who are idiochromatic understand that they are extremely rare. You have to understand that gift, that talent, even though no one recognizes you. Peridot is not considered to be a precious gemstone. It's just a gemstone. In fact, peridot has been around, like I said, for 4,000 years. For a few hundred years, people forgot all about peridot. It wasn't until 1900s that peridot became popular again. But guess what? If peridot was a living being, peridot wouldn't have worried about it, because peridot understands why it's green. Remember Kermit the Frog? Kermit said it's not easy being green. That's what he was talking about. When you understand who you are, when you understand what you have to do, what your mission is. Everybody may not understand your value, but that's what you have to understand it. You have to understand what you bring to the planet. And regardless of what someone else may think about your gift, your talent, your skill, the way you think, you have to bring it, because that is what you are tasked to do. That's why God put you here. God, the universe, the force, whatever works for you. That's why you're here. And when you are a diamond, when you understand that as a human being, we can be allochromatic and we can be idiochromatic anytime we want to. So I hope that you enjoyed today. I hope that you begin again, as I always say, to take just time to just think about it. This is not just hocus pocus. This is science. This is how it works. And if it works for the 118 elements in the universe, then it works for you. So I'm telling you, as I always say, my name is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemological storyteller. And what I want you to do today is to take time to look at your life, look at what you bring, look at what you do in the world, to your kids, to your coworkers, to your friends, to your neighborhood, to your community, and understand and begin to discover the value of your own stories. So until next week, have a wonderful day. Au revoir. Atatella. Bye-bye.